It's a critical moment for the candidates, that final push as primary and caucus voters get ready to head to the polls.
Good morning, Dubuque. How are you?
The candidates, all aware a strong showing here can possibly land them here. But before the votes are cast, it's time for candid chats.
How big of a factor do you think being openly gay either helps or hurts you in this race?
You know, I actually don't think that it will be that big of a factor on most voters' minds.
What motivates these men and women to run for president? What worries them? And how are they different than the competition?
You've never lost a campaign.
I've never lost a campaign all the way back to elementary school.
You're Madam Secretary Treasurer all the way back in.
Yeah, exactly. And then I had a slogan.
Oh, he's bodying up.
We push the candidates on the court.
A lot of people would be surprised that you're still in it. Are you?
I am pleased but not surprised.
Ask for explanations.
The Washington Examiner called you the strongest candidate in 2020.
It's a low bar.
And kick back over a cold one.
Cheers.
Testing their strategy.
This is going to be difficult.
And their skills.
I think I need traction now.
In our Your Voice, Your Future campaign conversations. After all of the campaigning, all the stumping, the speeches, it's time to start tallying votes. And to make sure that you're well versed before filling out ballots, we spent quality time with as many of the candidates who are willing in what we're calling campaign conversations. First up, if you're part of the so-called Yang Gang, you likely already know about Andrew Yang's story. If you don't, the entrepreneur broke onto the scene seemingly out of nowhere, first through podcasts, then caught fire online, and has since only missed the debate stage once. And he showed us he's got more than just political game. In politics, there are sure things, a middle ground, and then long shots. And entrepreneur Andrew Yang is quickly finding his way out of that last category. On a New York basketball court, the presidential hopeful who plays and posts videos of his skills online agreed to a little one-on-one time. So I was thinking we'd play a little game of horse.
Sure.
But we call it POTUS.
POTUS.
Is it appropriate for you?
Yes.
Oh. Yang has made lots of challenges look easy. Out of virtual anonymity and often dismissed by the media, his unorthodox ideas and humor created a fan base called the Yang Gang, who has now delivered him to every debate stage.
You were labeled the internet's favorite candidate.
Yep.
How do you get that to translate to the voters' favorite candidate?
We're going through the greatest economic transformation in our country's history, and we need big solutions and a new way forward that's going to help Americans day to day, like my freedom dividend of $1,000 a month for every American adult, which we can totally afford.
So you would defend against the critics that might even label that a gimmick.
For Jody Fassey in New Hampshire, it was car repairs to visit her daughter. For Mallory Shannon in Florida, it was heading back to school at the age of 68. So that's what the $1,000 a month means in real life.
Oh.
You're about to be pot.
I am.
That was close.
Explain democracy dollars to me.
Yes, democracy does. I love it. So Americans right now fear that our government has been overrun by corporate money and lobbyists, which it has. We're right. So what's the answer? The answer is we give every American voter 100 democracy dollars that only we can use on any candidate or campaign, and this would unite the people and the money and make it so that our legislators actually listen to us. This is the way that we can actually take our government back and have it work for us.
All right, lightning round, you ready?
Sure.
Okay, free college tuition?
Not free, but it definitely needs to be a lot lower and more manageable for families around the country.
Medicare for all?
Yes, but I would not get rid of private insurance because a lot of Americans enjoy their current coverage.
Decriminalizing not just marijuana, but also opioids, that's something you're pushing for?
And when other nations have decriminalized opiates for personal use, they've seen lower overdoses and lower substance abuse rates. So if you're selling, you go to jail. But if you're not selling and you're addicted, then we refer you to counseling and treatment.
Term limits for the Supreme Court?
Yes. In a modern country, we should not have our laws hinge upon the health of an 80-plus-year-old.
We're on a basketball court. Jordan or LeBron?
I'm going to say Jordan by the tiniest of hairs, but I would say LeBron in terms of social impact.
Oh, he's bodying up.
It's getting physical.
We failed to successfully emulate either.
Ah,
Though Yang easily took me in our round of POTUS,
Oh, from way downtown.
a gentleman's draw in one-on-one.
tie. It was a tie.
Was it a tie?
You were up like 2-1.
Very magnanimous.
After all, his motto is humanity first. He's got proposals for eliminating private prisons and 9 months of employer-paid family leave for new parents. Though the husband and father of 2 knows there are few layups in life, and this race won't be either.
A lot of people would be surprised that you're still in it. Are you?
I am pleased but not surprised. I mean, you don't run for president if you don't expect to do well.
Hey!
I asked Andrew Yang, who is his political hero. He said he's actually Teddy Roosevelt's great-great-granddaughter's godfather, which he jokes makes him absolutely nothing, but nonetheless, he's a fan. In contrast is former Congressman John Delaney of Maryland, who insists he's not your average politician. He's not taking big corporate cash and says he's also the only Democratic option who's succeeded both in the business world and on Capitol Hill. We wanted to find out why Delaney thinks his return to Washington could be just what the country needs. A walk around Washington, and John Delaney sees his old stomping grounds a little less memory lane, a little more fixer-upper, and why he jumped into the race earlier than any other Democrat, as in really early. I want to start by talking about a date, July 28th, 2017. That's when you declared.
Day that will live in history.
That's a long time ago you
is,
declared.
yeah.
It's got to feel like a lifetime by now.
It has. It's been a real chapter.
You worked in the building just behind us here for 3 terms.
Yes.
Is it broken?
Yes, it is broken. And it's broken for lots of reasons. It's broken because the country's divided. And at the end of the day, the Congress of the United States does represent the people.
So when people say this is the most divided they've ever seen it, is that hyperbole or do you think that's fair?
When people say that, they're not thinking about American history, because you can't be more divided than the Civil War, obviously.
Delaney argues the top contenders are too far left and with old ideas. The former entrepreneur who made millions off publicly traded companies he started before the age of 40 says he's got a fresh approach on making a difference. You've proposed a national mandatory service program.
Yes.
Explain that.
Well, it doesn't start mandatory. It starts with voluntary, where we create incentives for young people to serve their country. So they graduate high school, they could join the military, they could do all kinds of community service, they could be part of a national infrastructure program to rebuild our country, or they could be part of something called the Climate Corps.
For how long?
Either 1 or 2 years. If they do 1 year, I would propose they get 2 years in-state tuition, and if they do 2 years, they get 3.
Fair enough. Let's talk about some issues. I want to kind of go lightning round. Should Americans be able to own assault-style weapons?
I want to pass, similar to what we had in the 90s, a ban on the future sale of assault weapons.
Should there be Medicare for all?
We should have universal health care, where every American has health care as a basic human right, but Americans should also have choices to choose private insurance options if that's what they want.
You're a devout Catholic, but you're also pro-choice?
So I believe in the separation of church and state, and I support Roe v. Wade as the law of the land. I'm fully supportive of marriage equality, gay marriage.
If you, hypothetically, were going to be on a ticket with someone else who's currently a Democratic contender right now, who would you match up with?
I'd like it to be someone who represents a step forward for the country, which is why I've said my vice president would be a woman.
The mild-mannered and mostly moderate Delaney says years ago he and his wife decided to dedicate their lives to public service, and there's no better way than in the White House.
Thanks for coming out. So nice to see you.
When Delaney isn't out on the trail stumping for votes, he's pumping, iron, and listening to some lyrical inspiration. The Washington Examiner called you the strongest candidate in 2020.
It's a low bar.
I mean, they say you can deadlift 350 pounds.
Yeah,
Is this true?
That is true.
How many Bruce Springsteen concerts have you been to?
30.
30? You met him?
You know, I've never met him. I know. As I always say, one of the benefits of being president, I'll meet Bruce Springsteen.
You'll invite him to the White House?
I won't pass a law to make him meet me, but I'll figure out
It won't be
somehow.
forcible.
It won't be forcible, but I'll figure out how to meet him.
Meanwhile, he says, just like the boss, he too was born to run. In a pool room near Columbus, Ohio, it's time to rack them, break, and break down what makes Tom Steyer tick. The activist, billionaire, and self-described outsider running for president.
Just run the table on me, Tom.
He's not used to losing at much.
Oh, you rat! You dirty scoundrel!
Good, I needed a pause. Let's talk politics for a minute.
Please.
And having taken on the tobacco industry, oil companies, and utilities, now his sights are set on politics.
Did you feel that there was going to be this pretty big challenge just introducing yourself to the American public?
Yeah, I mean, most people don't know who I am.
It's not that you hadn't been part of the political scene. A lot of people would say that you were kind of the forefather of this impeachment argument.
Look, I definitely started Need to Impeach 2 years ago.
I've got some lightning round questions for you. What do you think about the proposal to take back guns? Are you in favor?
No. What I proposed was a voluntary buyback.
Should there be Medicare for all?
I'm a public option person. I'm not for Medicare for all.
Decriminalizing illegal crossings of the border?
I believe that we can control our borders without criminalizing the people who come over.
As for term limits,
I talked about 12-year term limits for congresspeople and senators. If I go do a town hall anywhere in America and I say 12-year term limits, applause.
If you say it in Washington?
Hiss. Hiss boo.
You're obviously very passionate about the climate. What's one thing that the average person could do right now today, if everyone did it across the country, would make you happy?
Vote for me. And I'm not kidding, and I'll tell you why. I'm by far the most aggressive person about climate. Okay, this is going to be difficult.
Steyer claims he's not competitive, but shows creativity.
No, I think I need traction now.
And goals are meant to be met. He's climbed Kilimanjaro and is currently hiking California's 15 tallest mountains. It's a drive that helped him create one of the world's largest hedge funds and earn a fortune.
Some people would be surprised that an actual billionaire would be promoting a wealth tax. You should be paying more?
Definitely.
Are the rich too rich?
Definitely. Look, I'm not opposed to people making money, but we should have a much more progressive tax structure.
What about the complaints from some of your fellow candidates who say you're buying your way in?
If people say to me, yeah, you see a big problem, you go after it with all your time, with all your heart and soul, and your money. That's not the worst thing that's ever been said about somebody. I can live with that. That, in fact, I put everything I have into trying to solve the biggest problems in America.
Including some of your own money.
Yeah, absolutely.
As for his win here,
You said you had not played in how long?
God, it's been decades. No kidding.
Decades.
that he certainly didn't buy. He just plain beat me.
You know, Scott is so competitive.
And despite all that money, Tom Steyer telling me he drove a Honda Accord for 17 years until recently it died and he traded it in for a more environmentally friendly Chevy Volt. In some respects, Pete Buttigieg is the most popular presidential candidate who a year ago most had not heard of. He was once elected the country's youngest mayor in a city of more than 100,000 people, serving 2 terms in South Bend, Indiana. Now the man known as Mayor Pete believes he's convincing enough people that he could one day become President Pete.
In western Iowa and in a junior high gym, several hundred curious have braved the snow and sub-zero wind chill to hear from a candidate whose name they're still learning to pronounce, but whose policies have more than piqued their interests.
There have been so many interviews, there's been so much television out there. For you to be at the center of all of this political mayhem right now, is it a little crazy for you?
It's like a hiring committee. You know, they're kicking the tires on our plans. They're looking us over. And one of the great things about the process as it comes through these early states is you really have to look voters in the eye.
Though Pete Buttigieg is facing more than just voters. He's facing someone as a student he once praised so highly. It won him the John F. Kennedy Profiling Courage Essay Contest.
I was a high school student. You had to write an essay about somebody who showed courage. And so I picked this obscure congressman from Vermont, Bernie Sanders. But it is kind of comical to find myself on stage competing with somebody that I was writing about when I was in high school.
Does it seem a little odd to go toe-to-toe with him?
You know, we have a somewhat different message, and I think it's safe to say I represent a very different messenger.
Is Bernie Sanders a potential running mate?
I suppose Nothing is impossible.
There are, what, a handful of candidates at this point who are roughly twice your age. Does America need a younger president?
Well, I do think that America is ready to turn the page. And one way to do that is by empowering a new generation of leadership.
He does stand out, not just for his youth. He turned 38 the day after our interview, or his service in Afghanistan, but for what would be a presidential first.
How big of a factor do you think being openly gay either helps or hurts you in this race?
You know, I actually don't think that it will be that big of a factor on most voters' minds. It's about one question that a voter is asking, and it's, how's my life going to be different if you're president instead of you? If I have the best answer to that, then I think a lot of these other things kind of wash away.
But there is this narrative out there that you're just not going to do well with black voters. How do you counter that?
Well, we just have to go out there and prove it wrong. There's definitely more work to do in the South, where voters, frankly, with very good reason, are very skeptical of anybody, even Democrats.
Often unflappable, but not always. Some things do bother the Harvard and Oxford grad.
Pretty much any time I open Twitter, I'm biting my lip pretty hard.
Okay, let's do a little lightning round. Medicare for all.
Medicare for all who want it. That's my proposal. Let people choose.
Legalizing marijuana.
Yes.
Free college.
So my plan would make it free for the first 80% or so of Americans, and then a sliding scale. But if you're in that top group, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and pay your own tuition.
Should ICE be abolished?
We're going to need some agency in charge of our immigration. The problem isn't just the agency, it's these cruel policies. And on my watch, they will not be in the business of separating families.
Give me a childhood hero.
The first time I ever wrote a fan letter was to Robert Ballard, the oceanographer who found the Titanic.
Did you get a return?
Actually, I did. Yeah, they wrote back. And he wrote some very complimentary things about the designs that I proposed for an unsinkable ship, even though it was done in crayon.
In how many languages can you say the word president?
6-ish.
What makes you nervous?
Being late. Every minute that we are behind schedule, I get a little more agitated.
So hopefully we're still on schedule. But what is something that nobody really knows about you yet?
I think sometimes people don't always see how passionate I am, but I wouldn't be doing this if I weren't very, very fired up about what's happening in our country and where we could go together.
You think it translates?
That's for others to decide.
Buttigieg telling me he can actually speak roughly 8 languages, and you'll see him get put to the test later in the show. One of the only candidates we sat down with so far has dropped out of the race, but we wanted to share his segment with you anyway, because in some ways, pundits argue the Montana governor's story shows that, ironically, it can be a lot harder sometimes when you're considered a moderate, as we found out chatting with the colorful character Steve Bullock over beers.
In a tucked-away bar in a back alley of Capitol Hill, it seems appropriate to talk about things or people not on everyone's radar.
Cheers.
Meet Steve Bullock, Montana governor and Democrat running for president.
Major national newspaper said you were the best-kept secret out there. Is that true?
Well, I'd like to think so, for sure. To be honest, I avoided cable television to a degree. I avoided a lot of the things that you get caught up in this city because it was about showing results, bringing people together, and getting things done.
What's not so secret, his uncanny ability to keep winning, even when Montana voters chose the Republican presidential candidate.
I was the only Democrat in the country to get reelected in a state where Donald Trump won.
Are you saying that's proof then that maybe people aren't as polarized or as divided as we say they are?
I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Vegetarian, whatever you call yourself, right? You want a safe community, a decent job, a roof over your head. People want the economy to work and work for them, and they want government to work and work for them.
Do you think the left is going too far left?
Like, folks that I talk to don't want free everything, right? What they want is a fair shot.
So let's go through some issues. What kind of lightning round? Should Donald Trump be impeached?
Before 2 weeks ago, I said no. Now I think that the inquiry has to go forward, and we have to see where it goes.
What do you think about the proposal that's out there right now to take back guns?
Look, I think that we have to do some things, and I'm a gun owner. Dixon, Walmart are no longer even selling assault weapons. They're not used for self-defense. They're not used for hunting. I don't think we should sell them anymore.
Medicare for all?
I think we should make sure that everybody has access to affordable care. You can do it with a public option, negotiate drug prices, any-surprise medical billing. I wouldn't do Medicare for all.
Would you decriminalize illegal crossings at the border?
No, that's a 90-year-old law. It's only Trump that's been using it to rip families apart.
Free college tuition?
I would not. I'd make free 2-year college tuition.
Decriminalize marijuana?
I think it should be a state-by-state decision. Like, we've taken some great strides on medical marijuana in Montana, but the federal government needs to get out of the way.
President Trump loves to have nicknames for his opponents. There's no nickname for you yet. You feel a little left out?
Yeah, you know, I'll probably be doing better once he gives me that nickname.
You didn't make the cut for 3 of the 4 debate nights. How much does that hurt you?
Honestly, most folks aren't tuned into the debates yet. Where it can hurt, though, is if folks say, oh, he's not on the debate stage, he doesn't have a shot.
Tell me about your boots.
What about these boots?
Do you have boots that are alligator skin from an alligator that you killed? Is this true?
Who was trying to help you on that? Actually, the boots I'm wearing. Yes, I did go out and go alligator hunting, and now I have boots to show for it.
Still living in his childhood home, the husband and father of 3 has run more than a dozen marathons and knows this race will require long-distance mentality too.
Can you promise your supporters you'll stick around through Iowa?
Absolutely. We're 4 months away from any voter expression of preference, and I'm going to be there every step of the way.
When we return, she believes in being Minnesota nice, but Amy Klobuchar opens up about the mentality needed to win. You mentioned that you can be blunt sometimes, and you were criticized in an article for being really tough with your staff.
Look, anyone that's got a take on Donald Trump has to be tough. And that is what I have always been.
And in case you haven't realized it, there are Republicans in this race too, trying to primary President Trump. Coming up, a strategy session with Bill Weld. The president has great popularity numbers within his own party.
Sure.
Money coming in hand over fist.
Right.
Do people say, what are you doing?
Well, no, not really, because the strategy is fairly simple.
Welcome back to our campaign conversations. Senator Amy Klobuchar just won the coveted New York Times endorsement, actually a co-endorsement with her Senate colleague Elizabeth Warren. But study the polls and sit down with the Minnesota senator, and you start to realize why both her confidence and her numbers have seen a surge. Senator, thank you for doing this.
Well, thank you.
It's maybe appropriate that we're meeting Senator Amy Klobuchar on a rooftop. After all, these days she feels the sky's the limit.
Some would question, are you peaking right now?
Peaking are these people that peaked early on. Me, I'm just like this.
You're on a ramp.
Yeah, because I've never maybe had this viral moment except when I announced in the middle of a blizzard.
And Coffee with Klobuchar exposes just how long the journey's been for her, how the first woman ever elected to the Senate by Minnesota has never lost a race, ever.
You've never lost a campaign.
I've never lost a campaign all the way back to elementary school. I was the, I think, secretary treasurer of my high school class.
You're Madam Secretary Treasurer all the way back in.
Yeah, exactly. And then I had a slogan all the way with Amy Kay, which I've since abandoned.
In all seriousness, it's been a bit of a calling or no?
Not as much as some people.
Lawyer was her first goal, then prosecutor.
The thing that drove me the most to run for office was when our daughter was born. And she couldn't swallow. It was a surprise. She was in intensive care, and they kicked me out of the hospital in 24 hours because that's what the insurance rule said at the time. We didn't know if she was going to live, and I literally was wheeled out of the hospital. After she got a little better, I went to the legislature, not as an elected, but as a mom, to advocate for one of the first laws in the country guaranteeing new moms and their babies a 48-hour hospital stay. And so I got hooked on politics.
You mentioned that you can be blunt sometimes, and you were criticized in an article for being really tough with your staff.
Look, anyone that's got a take on Donald Trump has to be tough. And that is what I have always been, and I think we need someone that's going to stand up for not just herself, but for the country. I love my staff, they're great, and we wouldn't have had the highest record for Democrats in the last Congress for passing bills if I didn't have great staff.
All right, so let me give you some lightning round questions. So I'll ask you super short questions. As a member of Congress, I'm sure you can do super short answers.
Oh, yeah, especially the Senate. We always say everything's been said, but I haven't said it.
All right, here we go. Should President Trump be impeached?
I think the impeachment proceeding should begin, and yes.
Medicare for all?
I believe there's a better way to do it, and that is with a nonprofit public option.
Decriminalizing crossing the border?
No, I think the better way to do this is by changing our laws, and that's comprehensive immigration reform.
Do you support a ban on assault weapons?
Yes.
Free college tuition?
No. It really, literally would make other people pay for rich kids to go to college.
If you were to pick a running mate right now, who would it be?
Now that I'm not going to reveal on this show.
Also to be revealed, can she capitalize on that bump in polling after the Ohio debate? And if she can keep her election streak alive amid all those other overachievers?
We did these interviews with other candidates. We've learned interesting things from them. Governor Bullock was wearing boots that were from an alligator he killed. Tom Steyer.
Okay, oh, you think I got that?
Tom
No,
Steyer told us he's hiking California's tallest 15 mountains. What do you bring to the table?
I once rode my bicycle against the wind and uphill from Minneapolis to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, 1,100 miles in 10 days, averaging 110 miles a day. So I'd like to challenge them to do that.
We've got about 30 seconds left. I want to go down the row, and I just want to know who excites you. Now, it doesn't mean that's who you're going to vote for, were you to vote. But who do you think is exciting right now? Let's just go down the row.
I'll answer this. Follow the bouncing ball of change. If you look back the last 40 years of presidents, look for the candidates that are the most different from Washington. Sanders and Buttigieg probably are that in this field.
I think Elizabeth Warren and Mayor Pete. If I saw Warren at South by Southwest last year, and even among a tech crowd, she was getting a lot of excitement.
Amisha.
Mayor Pete.
Mayor Pete. All right. Well, thank you to the three of you for your insights. Tremendously appreciated. Thank you to our panel. Thank you, too, for tuning in. We believe it's our responsibility to give each candidate, no matter where they stand in popularity or the polls, a chance to speak directly to you. That is our goal. I know we didn't show you all of the candidates, but don't worry. We've reached out to every single one of them, the president included, and hope they'll sit down with us soon, too. In the meantime, enjoy the moments that initially ended up on the edit room floor and see that just because they're mired in a very serious campaign doesn't mean they don't know how to laugh at themselves, proving, yes, politicians are people too. I'm Scott Thuman. Thank you so much for watching our campaign conversations. I'm Scott Thuman in New York with a presidential candidate some people call a long shot. Oh.
You know, what's Mama Corn say to baby corn? Where's popcorn?
I'm having fun. I got my coffee. It's like the best temperature ever in the history of America for an interview.
I heard your, what was it, French the other day? Is that what we heard?
Could have been. That's the problem. People say I speak these languages, and then the news crews come from these different countries.
Try and challenge you.
It's like a test.
C'est important ici dans notre avec notre voisin.
Oh, how did that not go in?
So I'll go ahead here. Checkmate. See, I told you it wouldn't take 25 moves.
Did that really just happen? We played like a few minutes, if I'm lucky.
And I didn't even use my queen. The bishop did it all.
As I always say, one of the benefits of being president, I'll meet Bruce Springsteen.
You'll invite him to the White House?
Yeah.
Guaranteed invitation for Bruce Springsteen.
There's no question if I'm president of the United States, I will make sure I meet Bruce Springsteen.
Last time, after the debate, it seemed to people that your tie got about as much attention as you in some circles. Even has a Twitter handle now. What do you make of that?
I must be a very styling guy.
I'm Scott Thuman in New York with a presidential candidate some people call a long shot. Our one-on-one with Andrew Yang coming up.